Welcome to Astronomy Daily, your daily guide to what's happening beyond our world. I'm Anna.
And I'm Avery. And today's genuinely one of those days we will remember for the rest of our lives.
54 years. That's how long it's been since any human being flew around the far side of the moon. And yesterday, that streak ended.
The Artemis II crew, Reed Wiseman, Victor Glover, Christina Koch, and Jeremy Hansen, completed a 7-hour lunar flyby that has rewritten the history books. We've got the full story, plus a wild NASA budget battle, a European-Chinese collaboration, a Blue Origin update, and a spacecraft headed to the space station.
Strap in. This is Astronomy Daily, Season 5, Episode 83.
Let's kick things off with the big one of the day.
Okay, let's start where the entire planet's attention has been focused. 252,760 miles from Earth.
That's how far the Artemis II Orion spacecraft reached at its maximum distance from Earth, officially breaking the record set by the Apollo 13 crew back in April 1970. Apollo 13 got to 248,655 miles. Artemis II just beat that by more than 4,000 miles.
And they didn't just nudge the record. They went farther than any human beings in the history of our species. Let that sink in.
The lunar flyby itself kicked off on Flight Day 6, that's Monday, April 6th. NASA scientists had prepared a packed science plan, 35 specific geological targets on the lunar surface, 10 science objectives, and the crew working in two-person shifts to photograph and document as much as possible.
Closest approach came at just 4,067 miles above the surface. That's close enough to see individual craters in extraordinary detail. From there, the spacecraft swung around the far side of the moon, and the crew went silent for about 45 minutes as the moon blocked all communication with Earth.
And when they came back, the crew described witnessing an Earthset and then an Earthrise as the Earth dropped below and then re-emerged from the lunar horizon. Commander Reed Wiseman said, and I'm paraphrasing here, that these numbers, 250,000 miles, are simply impossible for the human brain to process when you're actually living them.
Mission specialist Christina Koch had an emotional moment, too. She became the first woman in history to complete a lunar flyby. And when she spoke to NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman, she said she wasn't ready to go home.
Victor Glover described the moon out the window as one of the darkest things they could see, with deep space behind it appearing like a deep, surreal blue. Stars visible even through that darkness. His words, "It's quite a wicked view."
And another astronaut, we believe it was Jeremy Hansen, said there are simply no adjectives, that they'd need to invent new ones. Just phenomenal.
But it didn't stop there. As Orion swung back around, the crew witnessed something extraordinarily rare, a total solar eclipse as seen from beyond the moon's far side. The sun disappeared behind the lunar disk for nearly an hour.
And they used every second of it scientifically, studying the solar corona glowing around the edge of the moon, watching for meteoroid impacts on the lunar surface, and observing illuminated lunar dust. It was a science feast in the middle of a history-making adventure.
President Trump called in afterward to congratulate the crew, calling it one of the proudest moments for America. Commander Wiseman said his favorite sight was watching Mars align with the other planets during the eclipse, and musing about humanity becoming a two-planet species.
So where is the crew now? Day 7 is a rest day. Well earned, I'd say. Day 8 brings a radiation shelter construction demonstration and manual piloting tests. Day 10, April 10th, is splashdown day, the Pacific Ocean off San Diego.
Between now and then, the spacecraft will perform 3 trajectory correction burns to fine-tune its return path. And Orion's toilet, which has had a few headline-worthy hiccups, appears to be operating normally now after a frozen waistline was resolved.
The space toilet, always a crowd pleaser. But genuinely, the Universal Waste Management System is being tested as the first deep space bathroom, critical technology for future long-duration missions.
Fun fact time, the Artemis II crew's wake-up songs are curated by Mission Control and beamed up to start each day. The playlist is on Spotify. Look for it. It's a genuine artifact of this mission.
Also, the crew's zero-gravity indicator, the small toy or object that floats freely in the cabin showing when you've reached weightlessness, is an adorable stuffed animal they called Rise. So far, it's living up to the name.
And in a lovely Easter weekend moment before the flyby, pilot Victor Glover shared a message about how the mission reminds us of our shared humanity. As he said, "We are the same thing, and we've got to get through this together." Beautiful sentiment 250,000 miles from home.
The crew also attempted to recreate the famous Apollo 8 Earthrise photograph from 1968, one of the most important images in human history. We'll be watching for those photos as they're downlinked.
Now, even as the world celebrates Artemis II, there's a storm brewing back on Earth over NASA's finances. The White House Office of Management and Budget released its FY 2027 budget for NASA, and it's a repeat of last year's deeply controversial cuts.
The headline number, $18.8 billion. That's a 23% reduction from NASA's current $24.4 billion budget. And the hardest hit? The Science Mission Directorate, slashed by 47%, from $7.25 billion down to $3.9 billion.
Casey Dreyer of the Planetary Society called it, bluntly, an extinction-level event for science. More than 40 missions would be terminated, although the document only names two specifically, the Mars Sample Return Mission and the Severe Global Climate Data Program.
Notably, exploration funding, meaning Artemis, would actually increase by nearly 10% to $8.5 billion. So the administration's message is clear: humans to the moon, but science takes the hit.
Here's the important context, though. Congress rejected almost identical cuts last year. The same $18.8 billion request was made for FY 2026, and lawmakers chose to restore science funding across the board. Advocates say there's every reason to believe Congress will push back again.
But the uncertainty is damaging regardless. Missions like the Nancy Grace Roman Space Telescope, expected to launch later this year, and the Dragonfly Titan rotorcraft are among those potentially in the crosshairs.
While all eyes are on the moon, the International Space Station isn't going hungry. Tomorrow, Wednesday, April 8th, a SpaceX Falcon 9 is set to launch from Cape Canaveral carrying Northrop Grumman's Cygnus spacecraft on the NG-24 mission.
This Cygnus has been named the SS Stephen R. Nagel, in honor of the former NASA astronaut who flew 4 space shuttle missions and logged 723 hours in space.
The XL configuration is carrying more than 11,000 pounds of supplies and science hardware for the Expedition 73 crew. Highlights include an upgrade to NASA's Cold Atom Lab, which uses ultra-cold atoms to study quantum behavior, and equipment to help produce therapeutic stem cells for blood and cancer treatment research.
There's also an AI-powered climate camera built through a partnership between the Egyptian, Kenyan, and Ugandan space agencies, the ClimeCam payload, designed to provide near real-time weather data for disaster management in East Africa.
Unlike SpaceX's Dragon, Cygnus doesn't dock autonomously. Astronauts aboard the station use the Canadarm2 robotic arm to capture it. Then ground controllers dock it to the Unity module, a real team effort between humans and ground control.
Now, while Artemis II is grabbing most of the headlines, there's another remarkable mission launching in less than 48 hours, and this one is a genuine first in the history of space science.
On Thursday, April 9th, the SMILE mission lifts off from Europe's spaceport in French Guiana on a Vega C rocket. SMILE stands for the Solar Wind Magnetosphere Ionosphere Link Explorer. What it promises to deliver is humanity's very first complete, simultaneous view of how Earth's magnetic shield responds to the sun.
Think of it this way. Earth is constantly bombarded by charged particles streaming from the sun, the solar wind. Our planet is protected by a massive, invisible magnetic bubble called the magnetosphere. Without it, life on Earth simply could not exist. We've been studying pieces of this interaction for decades, but we've never been able to image the whole system at once. SMILE will change that.
It carries 4 instruments: a soft X-ray imager, an ultraviolet aurora camera, a light ion analyzer, and a magnetometer, all working together in real time to capture the magnetosphere as a complete dynamic system for the first time ever.
The orbit is extraordinary. After launch, SMILE fires its engines 11 times over 25 days to stretch its path into a highly elongated loop, reaching 121,000 kilometers above the North Pole, then sweeping back down to just 5,000 kilometers above the South Pole to beam its data home. Each orbit takes roughly 2 days.
At its high point over the North Pole, SMILE will continuously image the entire dayside magnetosphere for up to 40 hours per orbit. That's the longest uninterrupted auroral observation ever planned from space, a capability that's been missing since 2008.
There's also a remarkable geopolitical dimension here. SMILE is a joint mission between ESA and the Chinese Academy of Sciences, the first mission ever jointly designed, built, launched, and operated by both agencies. That partnership has survived a decade of development, technical setbacks, COVID delays, and considerable political headwinds. The fact that it's launching at all is itself a statement.
And the practical stakes are high. Better understanding of space weather and earlier prediction of solar storms protects satellites, power grids, financial systems, and communications networks worldwide. Liftoff is set for 0729 BST on April 9th, with live coverage on ESA Web TV.
The name SMILE comes from the mission acronym, but there's a literal smile involved too. ESA's simulations of what the X-ray camera will see show a smiley-faced shaped pattern of X-ray emission from Earth's magnetosphere, which may be the most delightful coincidence in all of space science.
The spacecraft weighs 2,300 kilograms, but 1,580 of those kilograms are fuel. It burns through 90% of its propellant in the first month alone just to reach its science orbit. It's essentially a fuel tank attached to instruments.
Here's a story that connects directly to Artemis II and the dream of long-term human presence on the moon. We know there's water ice locked in the permanently shadowed craters near the lunar South Pole, but we don't really know how much or exactly where. Blue Origin wants to fix that.
Earlier this year at the Lunar and Planetary Science Conference, Blue Origin formally introduced OASIS-1, the first mission in what it's calling Project Oasis, a multi-phase initiative to identify, assess, and ultimately use the moon's resources in situ. OASIS-1 is a 2-spacecraft mission, a pair of smallsats, to be deployed from Blue Origin's uncrewed Mk1 lander.
The 2 spacecraft will enter a highly elliptical low polar orbit, with their lowest point skimming just 10 kilometers above the lunar South Pole, close enough to collect extraordinarily detailed data about what's actually in those permanently shadowed regions.
The instrument suite is purpose-built for prospecting. Neutron spectroscopy to measure subsurface water ice concentrations down to 1 meter depth. Magnetometers for metal detection, a multispectral push-broom spectrometer for helium-3 and geological mapping. It's essentially a mining survey from orbit, with resolution in some modes down to less than 5 meters per pixel.
And then comes the finale. After 90 days of global mapping, OASIS-1 conducts a controlled slow-motion descent, a 10-day deorbit phase where the instruments keep working at ultra-low altitudes, right up until impact. They'll be mapping water deposits at hundreds of meters per pixel in those final hours. Science, right to the end.
The commercial model is fascinating too. Blue Origin plans to license the resulting resource maps to other companies who need that data to design lunar mining hardware and attract investors. Any data without direct commercial use goes public via the European Space Resources Innovation Center. It's open science built on a commercial backbone.
The project is a partnership with Luxembourg and its small space agency. continuing that small nation's long tradition of being surprisingly central to the space resources industry. And it ties directly into Blue Origin's Blue Alchemist program, which aims to process lunar regolith into oxygen, solar cells, and power cables, the moon as a self-sustaining infrastructure hub.
As Blue Origin's VP of Advanced Concepts, Pat Ramey, has put it, once we know what's really there and how to access it, everything changes. With Artemis II heading home right now, that future is feeling closer than ever.
Before we go, let's look ahead at what's happening in the night sky this month, because April is actually a great time to be outside looking up.
Comet C/2025 R3 is your prime target. It's expected to peak around April 17th and make its closest approach to Earth on April 27th, coming within 44 million miles. Magnitude estimates put it around 8, so you'll need binoculars or a small telescope, but it should be a very rewarding sight in the eastern pre-dawn sky.
Then there's the Lyrid meteor shower, which peaks on the night of April 21st into the 22nd. The Lyrids are one of the oldest recorded meteor showers. There are observations going back to 687 BC. They come from debris shed by Comet Thatcher, and you'll want to look toward the constellation Lyra from around 10 p.m. local time.
The moon should be relatively cooperative for the Lyrids this year, meaning darker skies for the peak. And if you have a clear horizon just before sunrise, Mercury is putting on its best showing of the year as well. Look east just above Mars.
And that is your Astronomy Daily for Tuesday, April 7th, 2026. What a day to be alive and curious about the universe.
The Artemis II crew are heading home. They've seen what no human has since 1972. And the science, the photos, the data, all of that is just beginning to come back to Earth.
If this episode has inspired you, share it with someone who needs a little cosmic wonder in their day. You'll find us wherever great podcasts are heard, and all the links are in the show notes.
Find us on X, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Astro Daily Pod. And visit astronomydaily.io for extended show notes and resources.
Until tomorrow, keep looking up.
Astronomy.